Hey everybody, I'm Mike with Budget Guns and Gear Reviews, and this is The Right of the People, where we use the first to defend the second every Friday night at 7 p.m. Eastern. So uncover your keyboards and fire up your fingers. It's time to join the conversation.
You know, one of these days I'm going to actually get off my lazy ass and change that intro around because, you know what? This is not Budget Guns and Gear Reviews anymore. This is MK Outdoor Journal, but it does still remain The Right of the People. Of course, there's another lie thrown in there yet because it ain't Friday. It is, in fact, Sunday, December 5th, 2021. But again, this is still The Right of the People. Before we get into all that, I would like to welcome my esteemed guest. I normally say panel, but I don't have a panel today. It's just my guest, unless somebody else decides to wiggle on in here, which they're quite welcome to do. If you got a link, hop on. That's why I sent you the link. Anyhow, we have the one, the only, the tactical pickle himself, he who is trapped behind enemy lines, Calaveras 32 Special, otherwise known as Pickle. How are you, sir?
Hey, I'm here. I'm supposed to be a day off. I mean, this is double time today, right? I mean, and the check should be coming in sometime soon.
Yes, I will pay you double what I normally do.
Perfect.
Of course,
I'm doing good. Buddy.
2 times 0 is still...
This is true. I appreciate the invite, and looking forward to the show.
That first sip of the Grape Rockstar. Pure Zero. Nope, they're not a sponsor, unfortunately. Hey guys, if you're not, anti-gun and you looking for something to sponsor, I happily drink your stuff. So give your boy a holler. I want to welcome everybody out there in the chat. We got Mountain View in the house. Bernabe Sanchez, Patriot in the Dark, dropping in, says good evening. Just want to drop my vote for number 2. Kingpin's out here. Gunpowder Beauty is gracing us with her presence. Gun Lover Grandpa is in the house. Pickle pulling double duty. Let's see who else. Clint Torres is here. And yes, Mountain View it is. Also, not Friday. I got 5 out there watching. If you haven't sounded off, sound off. Just, and if you're watching this in the replay, sound off in the chat. Let us know what you think. Even if you disagree, that's totally okay. I have no problem with disagreement. The only thing I have a problem with is just basically being a douche. Disagree all you want. Have a reasoned, intelligent discussion, by taking out our opinions and comparing them with someone else's. That's how we decide if we maybe need to rethink our position. That's called growth. But just being a douche, that has no place. So myself, my mods, they will swing the band hammer, and that's how I like it. Jeremy, how you doing, buddy? Glad to see you out there. Normally, I don't think I've ever seen you actually in one of my chats. So glad to see you, man. Jeremy's actually a friend of mine. I've known him for about 35 years. So first time I've seen him in my chat. Glad to see you out there, brother. Anyhow,
if he's known you for that long, it might just be Stockholm syndrome at this point.
It could be. I kind of started off being the neighborhood bully. There was one time I kind of I used to extort the younger neighborhood kids for cigarettes, and Jeremy was one of them. In other words, if I saw them with smokes, I would make them tell me, or I'd snitch them out to their mom, or I'd just outright threaten to beat the piss out of them if they didn't give it to me. I was not a good kid. I was an asshole. Speaking of assholes, we got the current king of them. Wow, Alec Baldwin. I mean, I'm sure everybody who's listening to this or watching this or checking this out in the replay, you all know about the shooting incident during the filming of Alec Baldwin's movie Rust, where he drew a unloaded prop gun that multiple people failed to check, that had an actual live round in it, pointed it at the camera, or at least at the director of photography, with the director behind that person watching on a monitor. The weapon discharged, and the projectile struck Selena Hutchins. I think that's her name. But it struck her, went through her, and struck the director. She died, and he was wounded. But you know what? He didn't pull the trigger. Or at least that's what he says. Says the gun just went off. You know, he cocked it a little bit, and his thumb slipped off the hammer, and it fired. Anybody who has ever played with a single action revolver, which is what this was, it was a Colt clone, knows that that just simply doesn't happen unless several things have gone very, very wrong and have broken. Now, that being said, I do not know what the condition of the revolver in question was. I do not know if it was broken. But assuming that it was in working order, Alec Baldwin is telling a bald-faced lie. There's no way in hell that could have happened unless his booger hook was on the bang switch. The only way that could have happened is if he had his finger on the trigger, then pulled the hammer back, and it slipped off of his thumb, slipped off it, or he let it go. Then it would have fired. But this is the thing right here. This had to be involved. Had to. But you know what? Even if it was, even if it wasn't, that's not Alec's fault. Because Alec is blaming the victim.
Well, that's for 1 second. You know, just for my own, we know for sure it was a Colt clone, right? Because that's where I know. Yeah. Okay, because that's where those had the multiple clicks in the hammer, and that's where they. You know, my understanding is it won't go off at half. That's where if you pull it back to the first click, it won't drop.
It won't.
Versus some of the other, Schofields and some of those ones, I don't know.
It'll get caught on the safety notch. It'll get caught on half cock. It'll get caught, that's a 4-click hammer. It'll get caught on at least 3 of them, unless the trigger's pressed.
Right, and that's why I wanted to clarify that it was a Colt clone.
Yeah. So, here's this piece from the New York Post. Alec Baldwin blames the victim in sickening interview. This is from, when is this from? December 3rd. Just when you think Alec Baldwin can't go any lower, he blames Helena Hutchins, the woman he shot to death, for getting shot to death. Everything is at her direction, Baldwin told a sycophantic George Stephanopoulos during a jaw-dropping hour-long interview that aired Thursday night. I'm holding the gun where she told me to hold it, Baldwin said, which ended up right below her armpit. Which is what I was told. I don't know. There was so much Baldwin claimed not to know. And Stephanopoulos, his longtime friend from the Hamptons, not that the average viewer would know that, was only too eager to pitch softball after softball. Yes, one of ABC's leading journalists, I use that term loosely, hardly challenged Baldwin when he claimed repeatedly that he never pulled the trigger, that the gun just went rogue. I would never point a gun at anyone, Baldwin said, despite his earlier assertion that Hutchins had told him to point the gun at her, so he did, and pull the trigger at them. Never. The bullet striking and killing that woman came out of the barrel of the gun pointed directly at her, says retired FBI agent Bobby Chacon, who now works as a writer and on-set consultant in Hollywood. Bullets don't curve. He isn't in the Matrix. The trigger would still have to be pulled. I'm not aware of any gun firing itself, says Steve Wolf, a Hollywood firearms and special effects expert since 1994. I've never seen a gun self-discharge. A single-action revolver like this, the Colt that Baldwin fired, can be discharged very easily with minimal input required. The trigger still must have been pressed. Wolf is also outraged by a larger concern. It's really important to discredit anyone who claims that guns fire themselves, he says. If this becomes an acceptable defense, there goes any accountability when it comes to shooting people. We can't have this kind of guns shoot themselves thing. They don't. Perhaps, Baldwin is in denial. That's the generous interpretation, but it's hard to feel generous toward him when he and his wife have been behaving so deplorably. There was the jaunt to Vermont immediately after the shooting, stopping at Ralph Lauren and buying out a local tavern, sitting right in front of the windows where paparazzi could get unobstructed pictures. Then came the bizarre roadside press conference in which Hilaria yelled self-righteously at the press while angling to get in every camera frame. All quickly followed by the gross Instagram posts on Halloween and after, raving about how happy their children are, while Hutchins' son, only 9 when she died, was so traumatized he couldn't speak for 2 days after her death. On Thursday morning, hours before this interview aired, Baldwin was photographed going for coffee and loading up his car, en route to the Hamptons, no doubt, while his gross fraud of a wife, Hilaria, strutted around in metallic leggings, 4-inch heels, and a gold $1,900 Moncler vest. Thursday's little gambit, Baldwin attempting to elicit sympathy while pointing the finger at everyone else, was an epic miscalculation. He truly believes we'll feel sorry for him. Alec Baldwin, one of Hollywood's biggest bullies and rage monsters, attempting to squeeze out tears as he laments how this has ruined his love of movie making. Stephanopoulos is equally to blame here. This was an embarrassing line of questioning. What was it that drew you to this project in the first place, Stephanopoulos asked. To Rust. Who cares? What is this, an episode of Access Hollywood? People who are watching this show, Baldwin said, meaning people like you and me, the little people. You have no idea how unique a motion picture set is, the amount of care. Care? That's rich, given what we know about this set, the 7 crew members who walked out that very morning over documented safety concerns, at least 2 accidental gun discharges, 1 accidental special effects explosion, and a young, inexperienced armorer, but hey, sure, let's go with care. I looked at all these people, and I see how hard they worked, and they're so conscientious. Unbelievable. And you're part of one of the great collaborative processes in the world, movie making. Here's the essence of this tragedy. It was just a movie. A fast, cheap, and out-of-control production that cost a young wife and mother her life. Ignore Baldwin's excuses. Everyone from Chacon to Wolf to George Clooney and others has said safety protocols on set are specific, simple, exact, rigorous, and to be followed to the letter every time. Every single time. In speaking to me a few weeks ago, Wolf presented an interesting hypothetical. If that scene required Baldwin to pull the gun to his head and pull the trigger, I'm sure he would have taken a look inside the gun. Wouldn't you? If only Stephanopoulos had asked that question. Instead, we learn that Baldwin now has nightmares. Poor him. Feels no guilt and fully expects Hutchins' widower, Matthews, to sue, but is feeling pretty confident that he won't be charged criminally and that Matthew won't come after him personally. Someone is responsible for what happened, Baldwin said. And I know it's not me. After this interview, and Baldwin's callous demeanor these past few weeks, Matthew Hutchins, especially, might feel differently. Wow. Just, wow. The hubris of this guy, the arrogance, I just can't believe how... Well, I don't know why I can't believe it. I just, maybe it's because the fact that, you know, despite evidence to the contrary, Baldwin's a human being, but I just can't believe a human being would do something like this, would say some shit like that, would perform those types of mental gymnastics to do everything that he can to avoid any responsibility whatsoever to this. He blamed the victim? Well, she told me to point the gun at her and pull the trigger. What? And I didn't pull the trigger anyway. The gun just went off by itself. What do you guys think is ultimately going to happen from this? Both out in the chat, in the comments, and here on the panel. Because I'll tell you, I'll make a prediction. Goose egg. Nothing. Nothing. Baldwin will face no repercussions other than possibly a civil suit, which will get settled out of court for far less than the compensation that it deserves. Frankly, it should bankrupt him and ruin him forever. He should be thrust into prison for involuntary manslaughter at the very least. Do I think it's premeditated murder? No. But I do believe that it is a negligent homicide, and I think involuntary manslaughter fits. If it were Mike Kreitzer instead of Alec Baldwin, I'd already be in jail. Without any doubt. And there would be no hope of me ever getting out. Alec Baldwin, though? I mean, how many times have we seen the rich and the elite, the powerful, the entertainers, the Hollywood folks get away with garbage? I'm really struggling to keep this clean. Get away with garbage that you or I will go to prison for. That's what I think is going to end up happening. Am I wrong?
No, I think you're spot on. That's where, as you said, if it was average Joe that had done that exact same thing, we would have been within probably an hour of it happening. We'd have been sitting behind bars, not traveling all over the country. And you'd be lucky if you could have gotten a bail, so you could even be out before the trial. Yeah, that's right. I do agree. I agree with you as well on. I don't think it was a planned homicide by any means. It was a series of failures, in the checking as well as in the, failure of procedure, this kind of stuff. The fact, from what I've read, typically at least, well, not necessarily in New Mexico where it was being filmed, but at least, in some of the other states, including California, they're not allowed to have live ammo on set. So that way if you want to use the firearm for practice, whatever, you have to have you have to leave, do your whatever, and then when you come back, everything's checked, make sure you don't have any live ammo with you. Apparently, the Rust set, some of the, I don't know if it's the armor, some of the extras, whoever, were people that, they were avid firearms people, or they were, cowboy action reenactors, or whatever the case may have been. But I guess between, shoots, between, clips, some of them were off, on the backside of the ranch, doing target practice. So that, I think, certainly contributed to this incident, because there was the mix of blanks, duds, and live ammo.
Yeah, it should have never happened. Never. I mean, there are procedures in place, there are protocols in place that just weren't followed. And ultimately, Alec Baldwin's responsible for many reasons, but just two off the top of my head. Number one, he's the guy that had the gun in his hand. Number two, he's a producer. He's the one that made the decisions to hire someone inexperienced, or at least he was aware of the decisions and could have disputed it and could have done something about it, to hire someone inexperienced to be in charge of the firearms as the armorer, and to have that person have more jobs than just that one, because she was pulling double duty, and to try to rush production and cut corners, and ignore prior safety issues, and ignore the crew who were walking off the set due to the safety, and ultimately this comes down to accountability. And as I said, nothing's going to happen. Watch. I'd love to be wrong on this. I would love it. I would love it, love it, love it, love it, love it. But I don't think I am. New York Outcast says actors and politicians are special. He feels bad, so it's okay. Yeah, you're right. I don't know who deleted Jeremy's message, but that you could have left that one on there. Just FYI, whoever did that. Jeremy pointed out that Baldwin's just a piece of, and then the poo emoji. So yeah, yes, that he is. So yeah, that's Alec Baldwin for now. We do have more on him later. Let me see. Let me pull up our next topic. So, again, this is something I don't want to talk about, but kind of have to, because it is big news this week. And that's the Oxford high school shooting in Michigan, where this piece of shit took a gun to school and went in and shot people. You know, it's a horrible atrocity. Again, I don't ever call these things tragedies because they're not tragedies. A hurricane is a tragedy. A bridge collapse due to an earthquake is a tragedy. You know, tornadoes sucking up homes and spreading them all over the country. That's a tragedy. This is an atrocity. It's committed by a person. And as with these, and as is the case in pretty much every single one, there are red flags that crop up beforehand that could have stopped it. So much so that the boy's parents are actually facing accountability for this. They have been arrested. They have been charged in as a result of this, which I can't ever remember. Can you think of any instance where that's happened before, where the parents have actually been held accountable for this kind of thing because they ignored certain warning signs?
No, and that's where of course I haven't had a chance to do a deep dive on this yet, but that's where there's been claims on legacy media about that's where not only did they ignore certain signs, but supposedly this handgun was purchased for the kid. Which, if that can be proven, then I could definitely see where them having the potential charges. But that's where if it was purchased for mom or for dad and the kid just happened to get a hold of it, then I find the charges to be much more unusual.
It's funny you should mention that, because our first topic on this, first article on this topic, is from the Detroit Free Press by Dave Boucher from November 30th, updated December 1st. Oxford high school shooting suspect used gun dad bought on Black Friday. The 15-year-old Oxford high school sophomore, accused of fatally shooting 3 classmates and injuring at least 8 other people, used a handgun his dad purchased 4 days earlier on Black Friday, Oakland County Sheriff Mike Bouchard said late Tuesday evening. The weapon used was a 9mm Sig Sauer SP 2022 pistol, Bouchard said. The suspect, Ethan Crumbly, had 3 15-round magazines. That includes 11 rounds in the handgun and magazine and another 7 in his pocket when authorities apprehended the suspect. The sheriff said the suspect fired at least 30 rounds, a preliminary estimate based on shell casings found at the school. That likely indicates the shooter reloaded the handgun at least once during the shooting. Bouchard said the suspect, who is being held at County Juvenile Detention Facility, and his parents have retained an attorney and declined to speak with law enforcement. Bouchard did not say where exactly the handgun was purchased and whether it was a new weapon or previously owned by someone else. The U.S. Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives is assisting with the investigation, but a spokeswoman late Tuesday referred comment to the sheriff's office. Someone posted photos of the gun allegedly used at the Oxford High School and targets on social media in the days leading up to the Tuesday shooting. Bouchard confirmed the suspect appeared to make an online post with an image of the gun used, but the sheriff repeatedly stressed his office was not aware of any credible threats of violence ahead of the shooting. It's my understanding, again, that this was a recent weapon purchase and that he had been shooting with it. And they posted pictures of a target and the weapon, Bouchard said. Multiple parents told the Free Press that their children enrolled at the high school heard rumors of some violence ahead of school Tuesday. Some took it seriously enough to prevent their children from attending classes in person. Bouchard said he could not speak to the suspect's familiarity or ability with the handgun. Obviously, you don't have to be terribly accurate if you're right next to someone, Bouchard said. Law enforcement searched the suspect's home Tuesday, located in Oxford, and seized the suspect's cell phone. The crime scene is sprawling and the investigation will take time to complete, Bouchard said. He confirmed the school does not have metal detectors. I bet that's going to change. Let's see. Where is... We'll go ahead to this. Hold on a minute. I'm going to screen share this on my whatchamacallit, on GunTube, so Pickle can actually see it. So give me a second so I can cue this video up.
Oh, you're all good. That's from on my computer, so I'm actually watching the YouTube side as well.
Oh, okay. Well, then I'm just going to go back to the topics and do it there. Although I had this
world of
doggone Shutterstock ad. Let me mute that so I don't get a copyright strike. Oh, I can skip it too.
Accused of killing 4 students at a Michigan high school are pleading not guilty. They were arraigned just a couple of hours ago. This comes after James and Jennifer Crumbly were found hiding out inside of a room in a commercial building in Detroit during an hours-long manhunt. ABC's Karina Mitchell has the latest developments this morning.
We have taken into custody James and Jennifer Crumbly.
The parents of the teen charged in the Oxford High School shooting are now in custody.
They certainly appear to be distressed, as you can imagine. As I indicated, they were in a commercial building in a room. We were able to take them into custody without incident, but however, they were very distressing.
The couple last seen at their son's arraignment Wednesday, where they appeared via video. They were due to surrender ahead of their own arraignment on Friday, but did not present themselves. The FBI and the U.S. Marshal's Office helped the Sheriff's Office in the search, with the U.S. Marshals announcing an up to $10,000 reward for any information.
There were a lot of things that could have been so simple to prevent.
McDonald detailing a timeline beginning with James Crumbly's purchase of that Sig Sauer 9mm pistol on Black Friday. Prosecutors referencing these now deleted Instagram posts. One last Friday from the alleged shooter's account captioned, "Just got my new beauty today." And this post Saturday on his mother's account captioned, "Mom and Sunday testing out his new Christmas present." Then there were several in-classroom incidents on Monday where prosecutors say one teacher caught the suspect searching online for ammunition on his phone. The school saying they called the parents but never got a response. But Ethan's mother, Jennifer Crumbly, allegedly texting her son saying, quote, "I'm not mad at you. You have to learn not to get caught." And then another incident happening the morning of the shooting when prosecutors say a teacher confiscated an alarming drawing showing a gun, blood, and the words, "The thoughts won't stop. Help me." The Crumblys were called to the school where prosecutors say they refused to take Ethan home.
He was returned back to class with his backpack, where we have reason to believe the gun was stored in the backpack.
The shooting happening just hours later, and as the word spread, prosecutors say Jennifer Crumbly texting her son Ethan, "Don't do it." His dad calling 911 just minutes later to report his gun was missing and that Ethan might be the shooter.
The notion that a parent could read those words and also know that their son had access to a deadly weapon that they gave him is unconscionable, and I think it's criminal.
Hello, I'm Mark Brown. Get more great ABC7 content by clicking the subscribe button for our YouTube channel and download the ABC.
So, the day this happened, the day this happened, they had this kid in the office. Because he had a drawing of, a violent drawing with the words, "The voices won't stop, help me." Nobody thought to check his backpack? Mom and Dad didn't take him home. They ignored it. Mom's text the day or two before when he's searching for ammunition and stuff and doing crap that he shouldn't do on his cell phone was, just learn not to get caught. See, normally, if this were some sort of isolated thing, my stance on this would be along the lines of, you know what? You really can't watch your kids 24/7, 365. How can a parent be held responsible for shit that they didn't know about? Whether they should have known or not is not, but how can they be held responsible for that? How am I going to get in trouble if my kid goes out and shoplifts a candy bar? Why should I go to jail for that? But that's like comparing apples to bowling balls here, because, yeah, sure, they're both round, but they're two different things. In this case, there were clear warning signs that something was going to happen. Clear warning. Not necessarily a warning sign, a fucking sign. He might as well have had a sign hung around his neck that said school shooter. And they did nothing. And I'll tell you what, they knew something was going on anyway, because if the first thing that comes to your mind is, Ethan, don't do it, when you hear there's something going on at the school and you think, yep, my kid's doing it, you knew there was something wrong. But hey, you know what, let's go ahead and buy him a new pistol. I'm all for buying my kids guns. I'm all for shooting guns with my kids. I'm all for everybody doing that. Teaching responsible gun ownership, teaching gun safety, teaching, the awesome responsibility that comes with using firearms. I'm all for that. But I'm also for being responsible with it. And the parent recognizing the responsibility that they have to make sure that their child has the capacity to responsibly use the firearm. And in this case, that shit didn't happen. And it's pretty clear they knew something was wrong. Had they searched that kid's backpack that day, why, if he's got some shit like that, why wouldn't you search his backpack? Why wouldn't you search his locker? Why wouldn't you search him? Am I wrong? Am I overreacting to this? Am I, oh my God, am I taking the side and the stance of a anti-gun lib here? Or is this just common sense that someone with a soul would get upset about? Not that those are the only two options, but,
No, it definitely, with the way that the parents reacted, obviously there was more wrong. But that's as for why not, why wasn't the pack searched? I know I was talking with someone out in the chat with it. That's for the locker is school property. My understanding, the school can search a kid's locker anytime they want for any reason they want. Backpacks are personal property. And as such, I believe it would require them to have either parental consent or to have reasonable suspicion that there is something in the pack that is threatening. And although the image that he drew with the words that he drew were certainly concerning, and frankly probably shouldn't have been allowed to just walk free, either the school, either the parents need to take him home, or he needed to sit in the in the principal's office, or the if they had a resource officer, or they can call the local law enforcement or whatever, say, okay, there's something more going on. But there's probably a legal, because it's a kid's personal backpack and the parents wouldn't give permission, they probably couldn't search that. As for the...
I'm not sure that's accurate.
Okay, and if it's not, then I do apologize, but that's just from what I understand. As for the searching for the ammo, I mean, heck, I guess, you know what, I would have looked like a potential school shooter, you know, when I was in high school, because I was, looking up, ammo at school at times, because especially like, okay, I've got a duck hunt coming up soon, or whatever, or I was just curious what was on the market, this kind of stuff. So when I had time on the computer or on a phone or whatever, I was looking up some of that kind of stuff. No intention of doing anything, was definitely not trying to be a school shooter or anything like that. But that in itself, to me, is not a red flag. Everything else in combined, it certainly is, obviously was a warning sign. But that's where I think there's the voices won't stop, help me, was kind of, that was the screaming signal that
danger,
this guy needs
danger,
to be pulled.
Will Robinson, danger. I mean,
exactly. This guy needed to be pulled from, the school, and if the parents wouldn't deal with it, then, maybe Child Protective Services need to get involved or something. But that's for, I'm sure there's a lot of other.
All right, I
issues
just want to point something out, folks, and I am not a conspiracy theorist, but your phones are listening. Your phones are spying on you, because I just did the danger, Will Robinson shtick, and look what just popped up on my damn phone. That's hilarious. So, yeah, they are listening. That's crazy. No, dude, had the technology existed back then, which it didn't, it was before the internet, my ass would have been in trouble for searching guns and ammunition and whatnot in school. Matter of fact, I did get in trouble once for drawing guns and swords and knives and shit, doodling in the margins. So, yeah. I mean, I never shot the school up or none of that. But Gun Level Grandpa says you need both arms when you do that. Yeah. So, hey, folks, if any of these weird-ass comments from strange folk pop up, just remove it. Get rid of it like I just tried to do. And somehow, let me just hide user. Done. That's spam crap. Anyhow, here's the thing. What worries me about this, and I think in this instance, accountability for the parents is warranted. I absolutely believe it. They should have damn known. And matter of fact, it seems like they did know. There's some evidence to indicate that they did know something was wrong, but they still bought the kid a pistol, and they weren't apparently too worried about where it was. I know where my guns are. I would know if someone had it, but they didn't.
Well, and that, the mom's Facebook, the Instagram, whatever post, mom and son, a day at the range,
that's
shooting
cool.
His new pistol, but then
even that's fine.
Right, but I'm saying, but then the dad calling to report it as stolen.
Yeah.
Combine that with everything else that was happening. I mean, heck, my 8th grade graduation present was a Marlin Model 60 and 500 rounds of ammo to target practice with that summer.
Yep.
But that's right. I can tell you what, I did not have unlimited access to it. It was locked away, and I had to go to my father, and he had to pull it out for me. Mm-hmm. And then as soon as I was done, I cleaned it, and usually sitting at the kitchen table, and then as soon as I was done cleaning it, he took it and went and locked it back up again. It didn't sit out at all.
Yep.
So I mean, that's where the I'm saying is the kid's pistol on social media, and then the dad reporting it as stolen because apparently it was registered to him or whatever, is concerning. And that's
because they do have handgun registration in Michigan.
That very well could be where the charges on the parents are coming from, versus some of these other cases where where the parents haven't been charged in the past. I mean, that might be the nuances we're dealing with here.
Yeah. My concern is that it'll set precedent for stuff where the parents had no reasonable expectation that something foul was going to happen. In this case, the parents clearly did. My worry is that it'll set precedent for parents being charged when there is, again, like I said, when there is no reasonable expectation that they should have known something was going to happen. I do know that the usual suspects are, in fact, clamoring for more gun control already. Let me pull up my topics. God dang it. This is a piece from Detroit.cbslocal.com. Push for gun control bills renewed after Oxford High School shooting, from December 1st. On Wednesday, December 1st, Democrats vowed to push new gun control legislation and to revive stalled bills in Michigan's Republican-led legislature following the mass shooting that occurred at Oxford High School. After all, folks, never let a good tragedy go to waste, right? GOP leaders who have opposed these measures didn't immediately commit to policy changes. We can't do nothing, Senator Rosemary Bear, a Democrat whose district includes Oxford High School, told reporters after senators held a moment of silence for the dead. We have to take action. Right this minute, today, I think I really, really want to focus on the families and just trying to help them know that we're here for them, that we're supporting them in any way that we can. Whitmer said gun violence is a public health crisis. She called for unspecified actions beyond thoughts and prayers, but did not elaborate. She's previously backed a measure that would let judges order the seizure of firearms from people who pose a significant risk to themselves or others. In June, Bear introduced legislation aimed at holding accountable adults who fail to secure their firearms. The 15-year-old charged in Tuesday's slayings, Ethan Crumbley, used a handgun that his father had bought 4 days earlier. The bill would require adults to keep a firearm in a securely locked box or container if they know it is accessible to minors. If a minor obtained the gun and used it to kill or injure, the adult would face up to 5 years in prison. There would be exceptions if minors have permission for activities such as target practice and hunting. Republicans have not held a hearing on the measure or other gun control legislation. If we get obsessed with eliminating all risks, we will then develop and evolve into a country that we won't recognize because we'll also have no freedoms, Senate Majority Leader Mike Koenig said. It's a balance. It's a very narrow road. It is hard. These kind of events keep those thoughts in mind. He suggested there probably had been warning signs about the shooter, and he questioned how the teen accessed the gun. Those kinds of things are already controllable, but for maybe just missing the signs, Koenig said. Democratic-sponsored legislation introduced this session in past years would, among other things, exempt firearm safety devices from the state sales tax and expand universal background checks to all gun sales. And none of it would have prevented this. But, we have to do something, don't we? We can't just do nothing. And that's my fear on this. Yes, I said, and I do believe, that these parents should be held accountable. But I don't believe there should be mandatory rules for storage. There shouldn't be mandatory rules for really anything. Common freaking sense, yes. People should exercise common freaking sense and good judgment. But I don't think there should be anything done legislatively for this. It might seem to be contradictory, but I don't believe so.
There isn't really anything legislatively you can do, for this. That's where the father purchased it, renting the background checks, all this kind of stuff. And that's where even like a quote unquote a cool off period or a waiting period. So it would have happened next week instead of last week. Wouldn't because if the kid wanted to get a hold of it that badly, it would have happened. But that's where the father passed the background checks. That they're universal background checks. Well, dad already passed one. The storage laws. Well, that's where if the dad didn't know where the heck the dang thing was, then obviously he's not keeping track of his stuff that well. So storage laws wouldn't have really mattered because the kid probably would have had access to the dang combo for the safe anyhow.
Yep.
So that's where these feel-good, restrictive measures on those of us who actually follow the dang laws don't do squat for these psychos or the people who flat don't care.
New York Outcast says, strange how we haven't heard anything about assault Fords and vehicle violence. Think they may be gun racist. I think so. Which White says, in this day and time, common sense is an uncommon virtue. Yeah, New York Outcast says, well, you know what they say about common sense. I know, it's so rare it should be a freaking superpower. I get it. But the thing is, you just don't legislate crap like this. Buck says, my problem is that the parents took off. Yeah, they did take off. They were eventually found cowering in the room, but yeah. So I don't know, folks. This is tough. I mean, clearly to me, these parents should be held accountable. But where does that stop? That's the issue. That's where, common sense can get taken way too far into yet the other extreme of absurdity, right? To where you restrict every damn thing in the name of safety because, one person, one family, one instance were isolated things because, with 150 million guns, 150 million gun owners, half the country owning guns, I think that gun ownership would be much more of a problem if it were gun ownership that was the problem. And, it's, let's be honest, folks, it's not like these school shootings, like this is the first one. We've had stuff like this happen before. We all know it. We've had these mass shooting incidents happen before. We all know it. We've had instances where people who shouldn't have had access to firearms got access to firearms before. We all know it. But do those instances outweigh the benefit? And this is the real question here. Do those instances where things that shouldn't have happened mean that the rest of us have to be restricted? Do those instances where things that shouldn't have happen outweigh the societal good created by firearms and gun ownership? And I say no, they don't outweigh the societal good created by firearms and gun ownership. But I also think that we as a community do need to police ourselves, and we as a community do need to be more vocal with each other on calling out each other on bullshit, on unsafe practices, on crap that can lead to things that the jackals on the anti-gun side can use against us. Because believe you me, they're going to try to use this against us. They already are.
Mountain View actually makes a good point in the chat. Asking you their budget, but that's where if you think that this DA is using this to try to score points with organizations like Mom Demand Action, as a way of making a higher political name for themselves. And I was saying in the chat that I think it very well could be that they're doing that. Kind of like some of these prosecutors and other prosecutors in other areas have tried using similar situations to bolster their name and then try to turn it into a political office later or something.
I don't know enough about this DA. I don't know anything. So I really can't make an informed decision on this. It could be. But, you know, it's, again, this is that fine line of, yeah, someone needs to be held accountable for it. People need to be accountable for their actions. And by allowing their son access to this gun when they clearly knew he shouldn't have it, these people they messed up. And they messed up in a way that got people killed.
You know, informed decision. You know, in the day of these days with a 30 caliber clip is is an informed decision really necessary anymore?
Well, yeah. Jeremy says the school should have not let the kid back in school if they thought he needed to see a counselor for whatever the reason. I don't know about whatever the reason, but for this, you know, bloody ass graphic picture and the voices, stop it, help me. But yeah, his ass should have not went back to class that day. If he hadn't went back to class, we wouldn't be talking about this.
Right. That's like I said earlier. That's when the parent, you know, they called the parents in. The parents refused to do anything about the kid. That's for, you know, I hate to go that direction, but if the parents refuse to do it, maybe Child Protective Services or something might have been a better way of dealing with it. So that way, you could keep him out of class and you could address whatever issues the kid may have had.
Well, there's definitely some issues there. Couple reasons why I'll say that. Number one, he took a gun to school and he shot people. It's pretty clear that there are some issues. But they also, you know, just like the dude from Waukesha, this guy appeared in court wearing a turtle suit. So he's definitely on suicide precautions. I mean, just seeing him in that tells me that he's on suicide precautions. So, plus, you know, the fact that when something happened, mom and dad knew who it was. That tells me there's issues here. I can't believe that. As a parent, had the school called me in and told me about that stuff right then, right there, as a dad, had they called me in and told me that my son or one of my daughters had drawn this picture with those words on it, they would have left school right then. And I'd have searched their backpack before they even left. It's that simple. I'd have told the school to search their locker. It ain't about let's protect Bobby or Sue or Mary or whoever from getting in trouble. It's about let's protect everybody, and we can help our kid later. I say that,
and that's where
as a father,
I
would have done that.
And I would rather them, okay, yes, you search it, they get in trouble because they brought something with them they shouldn't have. In this case, a firearm. Whether it, it could have been a knife, it could have been any other number of things. But that's where the trouble that kid would have gotten in if they found a pistol in his bag he wasn't supposed to have is minuscule in comparison to what he is facing now with possibly 5 counts of first-degree murder.
Yeah. New York Outcast says, unfortunately, life will never be 100% safe. We're humans. Better to be able to protect yourself from the crazies. Mountain View asks, budget? For those of you that don't know, used to be budget. What about the parents that let their kids drive the family car and they hurt someone? Are the parents on the hook? Well, if the parents knew that there was some sort of indicator that the child was going to ram the car into a bunch of people and kill someone, yeah. If they had no reason to believe that, no. Same here. If I have no reason to believe that my kid is going to go do something like this, and they do, well, if a reasonable person would not have believed that, then I shouldn't have any culpability. However, in this case, it's pretty clear that they knew there was something wrong with their kid and that their kid was capable of doing something like this, so they should be held accountable. You see the difference? It's the knowledge that, yes, this is likely to happen, and I'm not going to do anything to prevent it. That's when the parental culpability should kick in, my opinion. Mountain View, yeah, I know, Mountain View. The point is, this could be a line that shouldn't be crossed. I understand what you're saying, but I don't think it's going to be a hard and fast thing. I think that it's a case by case, and in this case, yeah, they knew. Just based on their reactions. Again, when they found out that there's something went down at the school, mom's text the kid, don't do it. Dad says, yeah, that's probably my kid. That's a clear indicator that they knew. If they didn't know, then how can they be responsible? You understand what I mean? But they knew. They knew. I see where you're coming from, though, because and this is what concerns me as well, is that the anti-gun jackals won't take it as a case-by-case thing, and they'll try to make it blanket that that's it. It's on you regardless. And that is very concerning. I think that's what concerns me about this the most. But I think if it's made on a case-by-case basis, it's I don't know. This is tough. It's just in my gut, in my heart, in my head, these people knew. They should have done something. Any reasonable person would have known, and any reasonable person should have done something, and no one did. That day, man, that day. That kid had that gun with him that day, and it could have been stopped, but no one did anything. That's what burns my ass about it, both on the school side and on the parents' side. That day, there was a huge red flag sent up, and nobody acted. Or if they did act, it wasn't enough. That's what burns my ass on it. Gunpowder Beauty says, if my kid takes my car and has no license and is mentally unstable and goes and kills someone, yes, absolutely, I should be held accountable. Why did I leave the keys to where a kid could take it? Interesting discussion here, folks. Interesting discussion. And, that's the good thing. I've said it before. That's what I love about this media is that we can have these discussions. It's not just you guys listen on radio and me bloviating and talking and whatnot. We have interaction like this. I think it's great. And I think that's why we need to talk about these things, as unpleasant as it is. I didn't want to, honestly, really, I did not want to talk about this school shooting crap. I didn't want to do it. Did not want to do it. But I felt I had to, because it needs discussing, because it bears on our responsibility as gun owners, our responsibility as parents, our responsibility as citizens, our responsibility as teachers, as postal workers, as lawyers, as doctors, as anything. Our responsibility as human freaking beings. And I can't come to a hard and fast conclusion on this as to where this line should be. Again, I'm very heavily leaning towards it's a case-by-case thing. If there's some evidence that you should have known, then you should get held accountable, because it's your kid ultimately. Now, if something comes up out of the blue, there's no way in hell you could have known. Totally different. But they knew.
Yeah, now if the what was the I'm trying to think, one of the school shooters from not too long ago, it was using an AR, but that's for, it was before Parkland. You know, he had killed his mother who had owned the rifle, and then went to the school with it and used it to continue and start killing students. That was it may have been Sandy Hook.
That was Sandy Hook.
Yes, thank you. Now that would have been, that to me falls into a slightly different category.
Yeah,
because that's where, if the kid is using whether he used the gun or some other weapon to first execute the parent in order to get a hold of the parent's weapon, that it suggests that the parents were trying to stop them. They were trying to do things the right way. So that I wouldn't. Okay, say mom and dad. You know, mom's at work, so kid kills dad, and then takes dad's guns and goes shoots up the school. I wouldn't necessarily then try to hold mom, culpable, because there is suggestion that the parents were trying to do things the right way. So that, I think, would fall into one of those case by case where the parents aren't necessarily culpable for what happened.
Yeah, and there's indicators that these guys took absolutely zero precautions with this. Wall-Star Patriot says, budget, you think about how guns got into schools, but how about knives? I've seen kids bring pocket knives to school way too many times when I was in high school. Well, shit, when I was in high school, everybody carried pocket knives. I mean, I had one with me all day, every day in school, so did the teachers. I mean, hell, I've had teachers borrow my pocket knife. I know things are different than they were way back in the Jurassic when I went to high school, but it's the same kind of thing. You know, the security measures to prevent one can prevent the other. But if they're going to try to get away with something, they're going to try to get away with something. They're going to try to find a way around it. As a matter of fact, I had a kid locked up in where I used to work who had brought a knife to school. And it was a wooden knife that he whittled. This was an elementary school kid. He whittled this wooden knife to bring to school because someone called his mom a fat slut, and he was going to stab him with it. And he even carved it as a serrated edge so it would rip and tear more and hurt more, because he brought a wooden knife to get past the metal detector. So they'll find a way. They'll find a way.
Right, and that's where, I knew guys that, because, I didn't go to school quite as far back as when you did, buddy, but also it's a regional thing, too. That's where Chicago, New York, LA, they're going to have had the metal detectors and other things sooner versus some of the rural areas that, still don't have it. But that's where I know a lot of people carried pocket knives, and it was a tool for one thing or another. We never had any knife fights at the school. At least, up to this point, the school still hasn't, as far as I know. But
yeah, we had guns in our parking lot. Especially this time of year.
Well, that's where it was like the year before I started high school is when the school finally is like, okay, you need to not have your deer rifles in the back windows of your trucks anymore because you are parking technically on school property. So as long as they weren't visible, the school just kind of pretended they didn't realize. If there was a gun rack with two ropes coming off the bottom of it down behind the seat, they pretended not to notice. But that's where, same kind of idea. That's where it's a regional thing. That's where a lot of guys, that were of age on their drive home from work or drive home from school would stop and spend a couple hours trying to get themselves a deer for the year. But that's where if they want to bad enough, that's where, to harm somebody. That's where the wood knife that you referenced, it was allowed for, at least when I was in school, because the kids would have, like CD players or Walkmans in their pack. And if you have to go with the metal detector, well, that's going to set it off. But if you were to hide a small pocket knife under that, deep, 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 and you okay, I got, it's okay. You caught me. I have my CD player, but it's not currently plugged into my head. So I'm not breaking any rules. It's for my walk home after I get off the bus. If the knife is hidden under it, you're not necessarily going to see it. So the kids will find a way. Heck, look at prisons. Yeah. Are knives allowed in prisons? No, they figure out
they make them all
anything and
the time,
everything that can be possibly turned into a shank.
Mountain View again asked, what about the family members of gang members? Are we going to hold them accountable for what the scum does? This can be abused. And I would say, again, case-by-case basis. What did the parent of an underage gang member try to do to stop the kid from being involved in a gang? Did they do anything, or did they encourage it? Did they know about it and just ignore it?
I agree, and that's
in my career, I've run into thousands of kids in gangs, and 99% of the time, the parents knew about it and did shit, did nothing. So, yeah, I probably would hold them accountable. Because I see,
and that's right.
I see youth gangs as a scourge. So, yeah.
I think I responded to, may have been Mountain View or somebody else much earlier on in the chat, a similar type of question. I think whoever it was specifically said, like, well, the grandmother. Like, well, if the grandmother is, through negligence or intentional, is providing them with whatever weapon they have used, then I definitely could see that. Or like what you're saying, that's where the kid is, trying to haze into a gang and you don't do anything about it. Or that's where, there's a lot of that kind of stuff that if the parents aren't doing anything or have literally decided to stick their head in the sand like a dang ostrich, to pretend there's no problems, then they are potentially culpable. Now, if they are working to prevent problems, then they are, then it's reasonable to say that they are no longer culpable.
Yeah. If you're trying to do something about it, or you at the very least didn't do something to enable it, that's one thing. But if you knew there was something going on and you did nothing to really stop it, and particularly if you do something to enable it, fry your ass. I mean, hell, I've seen plenty of kids whose parents encouraged them to be in the gang because they were making money. Encouraged them to go out and sling dope because they were making money.
New York Outcast, also makes an interesting point. That's where, let the teachers, carry some sort of, protection for themselves. Whether, in my opinion, whether that be firearms or pepper spray or billy club or something that they can use. And he also said, or hire private security. Keep the police out of schools. Every little thing doesn't need a police attention, in his opinion.
Yeah.
And he does have a fair point. That's where let the staff do certain, do certain things so they can protect themselves and protect the student. There's a certain point though where I think you sometimes have to bring in that, the authority, bring in, not the authorities, sorry, that's where bring in law enforcement, bring in other agencies. That's where, like, using this kid as an example, that's why I was saying, like, okay, the school has limited as to what they can do. So they called the parents in. The parents, got, irritated, did whatever, and said, and got mad at the school for, how dare they pull, little Timmy out of class, whatever his name is. I don't really care what his name is. And that's, to me, shows a negligence, especially obviously with after that photo that he, that drawing he had.
Yeah.
And then the other actions that they had taken or ways they had addressed him, they obviously knew there were other issues. That is what things like Child Protective Services is for. That's what, the kid's, potentially, dangerous to himself or others. That's where, having, the kid having to go and sit overnight in the holding cell at the local police department while, on a psych watch or something. That's when those other agencies, that's what they are for. We pay the taxes to fund those things because they are supposed to provide us certain services. So I do agree we don't need to call them in every time, a kid gets frustrated on a spelling test. But, situations such as this where, they're talking about, hey, I'm hearing voices and this kind of stuff, is certainly times when you should be able to call those services in.
Yeah. Tough question. Good discussion, though. But I have to kind of move things along. Let's see. Where am I going to go with this? Oh, Pennsylvania. I feel bad for y'all. I really do. Because what happened to you is what I fear might happen in Ohio. You know, Ohio, constitutional carry has passed our House, has yet to pass our Senate. And when it passes the Senate, it has to withstand the possibility of a Mike DeWine veto. Well, that was more than a possibility in Pennsylvania because Governor Tom Wolf vetoed their constitutional carry bill. This is from PennLive.com from December 3rd. As promised, Governor Tom Wolf has vetoed Senate Bill 565, the bill that would have done away with the longtime state requirement of a special permit to carry a gun concealed in one's person or in a car. Proponents have argued that the concealed carry permits are an unnecessary regulation on gun owners because, in their view, it's just as much a fundamental right to bear arms as it is to own them. All Pennsylvanians need to get the permit is to have a clean background check, 2 character references, and $20 for the application fee. But some gun rights advocates say even those steps are unnecessary hoops for law-abiding citizens who, in most cases, already have to pass a background check when they purchase a gun. The background check regimen at purchase would remain in place under this proposal. Wolf, in his veto message, disagreed, calling the checks that go with the concealed carry permits an important public safety control in an age of spiking gun violence. His veto message to the legislature states, in part, this legislation removes the requirement that an individual obtain a license and with it, the ability of law enforcement to conduct a background investigation. Removal of the licensing background investigation will hinder the ability of law enforcement to prevent individuals who should not be able to carry a firearm concealed from doing so. I'm going to stop right there. Nothing prevents people who shouldn't be able to carry a firearm from carrying a firearm. They're called criminals for a reason, you absolute... But I digress. Domestic abusers and other dangerous criminals should not have the ability to carry hidden weapons in our communities. Well, hey, guess what? They're already forbidden from it and would have still been forbidden from it and would have still done it anyway, just like they do now. In states without concealed carry licenses, there is an 11% higher rate of homicide than those states who require a license. Bullshit. The Pennsylvania Chiefs of Police Association and the Pennsylvania District Attorneys Association, both Democrat groups, both oppose this legislation, and there are no law enforcement organizations in Pennsylvania that support this bill. I stand with them. Domestic abuse survivors and advocates, responsible gun owners, and victims of gun violence who have expressed their opposition to this dangerous bill. This veto is not a move to restrict the rights of lawful gun owners, bullshit, as they can still conceal carry when they apply for a permit and successfully pass a background check. So far in 2021, nearly 360,000 licensed to carry background checks were completed and nearly 11,000 were denied. This is a veto against harmful legislation that puts public safety at risk across the Commonwealth. Wolf also reiterated his call for the legislature to act on bills that he argues will address gun violence, including safe storage legislation, extreme risk protection orders, enhanced reporting requirements for lost or stolen guns, and closing gaps in the background check system. The bill's prime sponsor, which, by the way, means no more private sales without a background check. The bill's prime sponsor, Senator Chris Dush, R. Jefferson County, ridiculed Wolf's argument that his legislation would jeopardize public safety, saying in a statement issued after the veto that no criminal has ever said, "I want to go commit assault and murder, but I have to wait for my license to carry to come in." Permits to carry a concealed weapon have been on the books in some way, shape, or form in Pennsylvania since the 1930s, and the current requirement has been in place since 1988. The constitutional carry push is a counteroffensive by gun rights supporters that gained momentum here, said Kim Stoltfer, president of the state chapter of Firearms Owners Against Crimes, because of the growing number of cities and towns that have tried to adopt new local gun ordinances when gun regulation is supposed to be handled strictly by the state. Stoltfer said his group has also fielded growing complaints from gun owners this year about discrepancies in administration of the concealed carry permit application process around the state. It's a reaction to government failing to follow the law, Stoltfer said. Support for the so-called constitutional carry bill is well short of the 2/3 majorities needed for a veto override, so that should effectively end this debate for the legislative term in Pennsylvania. But it also likely ensures that control and gun owners' rights will continue to be an important issue in the 2022 gubernatorial and legislative races. And all I can say to my neighbors in the Keystone State is you damn well need to remember this when the polls open up and this son of a bitch is up for re-election. That's what I say. Let me see what's going on out in the chat. Okay. Nothing that bears on the topic. So, yeah, folks, remember this when it comes time that Tom Wolf stabbed you in the back, Pennsylvanians. And, Midnight Range TM, I expect you to be at the forefront of this. Get his ass voted out. Not that, my expectations mean squat, but hey. There's some good news legislatively across the country. I don't know if anyone's heard of Kyle's Law, but it is a movement to pass a law, both nationally and in different states, that would prevent malicious prosecution and hold prosecutors accountable if they do maliciously prosecute someone. This is in the wake of the Rittenhouse trial, where that gross miscarriage of justice, where he was charged and brought to trial to begin with on a case that was so disgustingly thin that you could see right through it. In Oklahoma, Kyle's Law has been introduced this legislative session. This is from Fox 23 News, fox23.com. Senator Nathan Dahm to file Kyle's Law in Oklahoma State Senate. November 23rd, 2021. Yeah, this is a little bit older, but I just found out about it, so I'm going to put it in here. Tulsa, Oklahoma. Senator Nathan Dahm, Republican, Broken Arrow, filed legislation that protects Oklahomans that use self-defense from facing trial. Senate Bill 1120 protects those who would use self-defense from trial for political reasons. According to a statement from Dahm, if the measure becomes law, victims of malicious prosecution would be able to receive compensation for expenses and damages. Dahm filed SB 1120, or Kyle's Law, on Tuesday. Kyle's Law is named after Kyle Rittenhouse, a 17-year-old boy from Illinois who fatally shot 2 men and wounded another in Kenosha, Wisconsin, during protests over the shooting of Jacob Blake, a black man, by a white police officer. Rittenhouse argued that he fired in self-defense after the 3 men attacked him. He was charged with first-degree reckless homicide, first-degree recklessly endangering safety, first-degree intentional homicide, attempted first-degree intentional homicide, possession of a dangerous weapon by a person under 18 years of age, and first-degree recklessly endangering safety. Public reaction to the shootings were heavily polarized. Right-wing political figures hailed Rittenhouse as a hero among them and pushed for his acquittal, stating that he acted in self-defense. Left-wing political figures said that acquitting Rittenhouse is a miscarriage of justice and the display of racial double standards in the U.S. justice system. Rittenhouse's trial lasted from November 2nd to November 15th. On November 19th, the jury reached a unanimous verdict. Rittenhouse was found not guilty on all counts. Kyle Rittenhouse should never have been charged, Dahm said. It is our duty to protect the rights of the people we represent, and the right to self-defense is paramount. This bill will ensure that what happened to Kyle Rittenhouse cannot happen to the people of Oklahoma. Under this legislation, if a person is charged with murder but is found not guilty due to justifiable homicide, the state of Oklahoma would have to reimburse the defendant for all reasonable costs. This would include loss of wages, legal fees incurred, and other expenses involved in their defense. SB 1120 also states that in order to support a claim of malicious prosecution, the claimant must establish that the prosecution was instigated by the prosecutor and was without probable cause, according to a description of the law from Dahm's office. Malice may be established if the motive for the prosecution was something other than a desire to bring an offender to justice, the statement explained. Under the legislation, A prosecutor may be held personally liable to a claimant if a malicious prosecution is established. Now, from things that I've heard other places, like from the Law of Self-Defense YouTube channel, if you guys don't watch that, you probably should. Andrew Bronco, who wrote the book, The Law of Self-Defense, which I recommend. Everybody who's ever watched this channel and heard me talk about this crap knows that I recommend it. He was explained Kyle's Law, and he's involved with promoting this. Kyle's Law states that the jury, as part of their instructions, will get a questionnaire that will ask them, okay, if you found this guy not guilty, did the prosecutor prove at least 51% that self-defense was not warranted in this case? In other words, did he go by over half, but not enough to convict the guy, but enough to where, okay, there was at least a reasonable good faith effort made by the prosecution here to show that self-defense wasn't warranted. It's not enough to convict him, but it was enough that you could tell that the prosecutor was in good faith here. Because if you can't at least show 50%, then this case should have never been brought to trial. And I think this would fit the example here in the Rittenhouse case, because anyone who watched that trial at all, that prosecutor didn't even disprove self-defense by 30%, by 20%. His ass should have never brought this case, but he did. Not only would it allow a defendant to go after the state in the prosecutor's office in the official capacity for damages, but the prosecutor themselves individually for damages. So this would encourage prosecutors to make damn sure that this is not a self-defense case before bringing it to trial. I think it's great. I think it needs to happen. But I also think that there's no way in hell a snowball has a greater chance of turning into an iceberg in hell than this does of passing, because it's not ever gonna pass. I'll be amazed if it does pass somewhere, but I don't look for it. What do you think about it, Pickle? Do you have any opinion on it?
Sorry, I wasn't listening completely what you were saying, as I was having conversations with people in a text chat.
Oh, okay.
That's where we're having debates about ADA Binger and whatnot. But what I did catch was that the idea that if they can't prove that the DA had a reasonable suspicion of you doing something, that they should be held accountable, and that I do agree with. That's where that try to minimize the chances of someone using your worst day as a springboard to get to a higher political office.
Oh yeah, and that's exactly what Binger was doing. He doesn't want to be a DA. He wants to be the DA. He wants to be the Attorney General. He wants to be a judge. He wants to be something other than Assistant DA Little Binger.
Except I don't think he has, from what I can tell, I don't think, his demeanor, the way, his attire, just everything, his aura about him, I don't think his aspirations stop at the DA. I think he would want to be, because traditionally being a district attorney has been a fantastic springboard to being governor, and then from governor being able to go up into House or Senate or something along those lines. So I think his target was probably just shy of the White House.
Well, hopefully the good people of Wisconsin have seen what kind of a smug, arrogant asshole he is, and won't put him in any higher office. That would be wonderful. So there you go, folks. If you're in Oklahoma, might want to look into this. If so, do what I always say. Contact your Congress or elected representative, right? Let them know what you think about it. I think it's pretty damn great, but, that's just me. There is one thing, though, that's not great. And, Pickle, you have my condolences, sir. Because you guys out there in California, you got the El Screw this week. This is from Breitbart.com. Ninth Circuit reverses district court decision. Rules California magazine ban is constitutional. This is from November 30th. The United States Court of Appeals for the Ninth Circuit reversed a lower court ruling Tuesday, siding with California Attorney General Rob Bonta to allow the ban on possession of large-capacity magazines. On July 30th, 2017, Breitbart News noted that District Court Judge Roger Benitez ruled against California's large-capacity magazine ban, noting it failed the simple test of Heller. Benitez's ruling was appealed to the Ninth Circuit and upheld by a 3-judge panel of the Ninth Circuit on July 17th, 2018, sending it back to Benitez. Benitez then ruled against the ban again on March 29, 2019, citing Heller once more. He observed that millions of ammunition magazines able to hold more than 10 rounds are in common use by law-abiding responsible citizens for lawful uses like self-defense. This is enough to decide that a magazine able to hold more than 10 rounds passes the Heller test. The Ninth Circuit ruled the large-capacity magazine ban was unconstitutional on August 14, 2020. The case then went to an en banc hearing of the Ninth Circuit, and on November 30th, 2021, the en banc ruling was issued in favor of the ban, which comes as no surprise to me. I told you back then this is what was going to happen. The ruling says the en banc court reversed the district court's summary judgment and remanded for entry of judgment in favor of the defendant Rob Bonta, Attorney General for the state of California, in an action raising a facial challenge to California Penal Code Section 32310, which prohibits, with certain exceptions, possession of large-capacity magazines defined as those that can hold more than 10 rounds of ammunition. The en banc Ninth Circuit rejected arguments that a large-capacity ban necessarily forces law-abiding citizens to forfeit magazines that were lawfully purchased, noting California law allows owners of large-capacity magazines to modify them to accept 10 rounds or fewer. Owners also may sell their magazines to firearm dealers or remove them from the state. And the law provides several exceptions to the ban on large-capacity magazines, including possession by active or retired law enforcement officers, security guards for armored vehicles, and holders of special weapons permits. The case is Duncan v. Bonta, number 19-55376, United States Court of Appeals for the Ninth Circuit. So what's next, folk, is that this will probably end up going before the Supreme Court, or at least being submitted for certiorari before the Supreme Court. And we'll see if that happens. Now, of course, any of that will be held off until next session, at least, of course. And it'll be interesting to see how the courts, and if the court's ruling in the MYSRPA case has any effect on this. Thoughts, Pickle?
I was actually just going to say that that's I don't think it'll go to the SCOTUS right away, because it was, the Ninth even flat out said they use intermediate scrutiny, in their decisions. And because intermediate scrutiny is currently being discussed on the current New York case, I think it will hold where it's at. The Bonta case will hold where it's at until we get a ruling on New York, because if that New York case, depending on how it's written, comes back with saying that the intermediate scrutiny does not work, it has to be strict scrutiny, that opens up the chance of litigation to begin again on cases such as this Bonta case, because the state has used the wrong scrutiny for so long, and the Ninth has used the wrong one for so long, that the Supreme Court decision could be what we need to more or less force the Ninth to try again.
Yep.
So it's going to make it, assuming they do what they are supposed to do at that point and apply strict scrutiny, which is still a big if, it would give a means of potentially overturning it.
Yeah, and hopefully something happens that you guys could get rid of this garbage, because it's a straight up infringement.
Well, and that's from what I was just listening earlier to a YouTube channel, that Armed Scholar. He is I think he's working for Firearms Policy Coalition now, but he is actually a California attorney, and he was saying when the en banc said their ruling, they kicked it back down to Benitez for him to issue his more or less pro-California dictate on how it's going to go from here. So that's where depending on how he says it, there's the possibility that all the magazines that were purchased during Freedom Week will have to be either turned over or destroyed, or there may be a push to get him to say, a grandfather clause of some sort and no additional purchases, which is also, tied in part to whether or not they, the pro-gun organizations may be able to get some sort of injunction put in to help prevent any kind of, a ruling saying it has to be destroyed or turned in until it, potentially has a chance to go through SCOTUS. So there's just still a lot of ifs.
Yes, we're still on, Gabriel. Good night to you. Let's see. Gun Love Grandpa says, almost time for Gizzard Gary's show. No, not quite. I still have, 27 minutes. Don't try to get me off just yet. Jeez. Although when I'm done here, be sure to go over to Gizzard Gary's channel and check out Foul Territory at 9 p.m. Eastern. Great stuff. Usually a great chat, particularly if you like looking at Gorn. So,
is Giz doing his this week? Last I heard,
I don't know.
He wasn't feeling well, and he was asking other people to fill in for him.
I know he was out there in the chat earlier. If you're still out there, Giz, are you doing something tonight? Let us know, brother. We are going to be moving on, though. Let me take a look at my topics, see if I have any left in my main topics. No, I think that is it. That is all the topics I have out there. But unfortunately, you know what? Yeah, we do have more stuff, obviously. These this doggone ban on magazines, even existing, is terrible. Oh wait, yeah, it's not Sunday night now. It's not Friday. I'm used to having you guys go over on Fridays to see Foul Territory. He is not on Sunday nights. He is on Friday nights. This is not Friday. I threw myself for a loop, right? Thanks for pointing that out, guys.
We do have the closer to look forward to tonight. If that's always a dumpster fire that can be fun to sit back and watch.
Well, I
throw gasoline on the fire now and then.
I don't know that we have the closer to look forward to, but I guess you have it to watch.
Well, that's for whenever you've got a big fire going. It's fun to heave another 5 gallons of gasoline onto it just to watch it blow up.
Yeah, sorry about that. I thought this was Friday. My bad. But hey, on a Friday when I'm done, go check out Foul Territory. And I guess tonight you can go watch the closer. Anyhow, there's the artist formerly known as Budget being an idiot. Speaking of being an idiot,
And now prepare yourself for another tale of stupidity in this episode of Moron of the Week.
First up in Moron of the Week, you guessed it, folks, Alec, liar, liar, pants on fire, Baldwin. Alec Baldwin claims a single-action revolver went off without a trigger pull. Here's why it's hard to believe him. Alec Baldwin claimed that he did not pull the trigger on the single-action revolver at the center of the Rust shooting. It's hard to believe, and here is why. The single-action mechanism requires multi-step manipulation in order to fire. The best way to explain this is by noting that there are two classes of revolvers, single action and double action. Ironically, the single action requires two actions to be performed in order to fire, while a double action requires only one. That's because it refers to what the functions of the trigger are, not the mechanism. For example, a double action can be fired by manually cocking the hammer, then pulling a trigger to release it, allowing it to slam down on the primer and fire the bullet. But a double action can also be fired with the hammer uncocked. This is done by simply pulling the trigger all the way back, allowing the trigger to pull to cock the hammer, and then that same trigger pull releasing the hammer, striking the primer, and boom. A single action does not have such options. It is only designed to fire after the hammer is manually cocked and the trigger pulled to release the hammer. Moreover, the hammer has to be manually cocked in between each shot in order to fire multiple shots with a single action revolver. Now, is it possible to accidentally pull the hammer back and release it while subsequently squeezing the trigger, thereby firing a single action revolver? The answer is yes. However, Alec Baldwin told NBC News' George Stephanopoulos the trigger wasn't pulled. I didn't pull the trigger. Baldwin added, no, I would never point a gun at anyone and pull the trigger. Never. Could the trigger have been somehow trapped back through a mechanical malfunction or outside interference, opening the door for the hammer to be manually pulled all the way and released to strike the primer and fire a bullet? Or could the hammer have been cocked back by someone else before the gun was in Baldwin's hands, thereby allowing a simple trigger pull to release the hammer and fire the gun? The second question is important because it's not uncommon for people to unintentionally touch the trigger of their gun while learning to draw it from a holster. If a single action's hammer was cocked, it could fire if the trigger was touched while drawing the gun from a holster. However, touching the trigger and firing the bullet would be nearly simultaneous. It would actually happen so quick that human senses might not be able to detect time between touching the trigger and hearing the gunshot. And this means the shot would go into the ground right by the shooter's foot or perhaps into the shooter's leg or pelvic region, depending on where the holster was located. UPI quoted Rust director Joel Souza indicating Baldwin was practicing cross-drawing, pulling the gun from a holster with the opposite side of his body at the time of the accident. Fox News Digital quotes Santa Fe County Sheriff Adam Mendoza saying, "Guns don't just go off, so whatever needs to happen to manipulate the firearm, he did it, and that it was in his hands." He did that, and it was in his hands. So let's listen to this lie.
She was someone who was loved by everyone who worked with and liked by everyone who worked with and admired. I mean, even now, I find it hard to believe that. It just doesn't seem real to me.
You haven't said much in public since that tragic accident. Why speak out now? I think the big question, and the one you must have asked yourself 1,000 times, how could this have happened? You've described it as a 1 in a trillion shot, and the gun was in your hand. How do you come to terms with that? It wasn't in the script for the trigger to be pulled.
Well, the trigger wasn't pulled. I didn't pull the trigger.
So you never pulled the trigger?
No. I would never point a gun at anyone and pull a trigger at them, never.
What did you think happened? How did a real bullet get on that set?
I have no idea. Someone put a live bullet in a gun, a bullet that wasn't even supposed to be on the property.
How do you respond to actors like George Clooney who say that every time they were handed a gun, they checked it themselves? Your emotions are so clearly so right there on the surface. You felt shock, you felt anger, you felt sadness. Do you feel guilt? You said you're not a victim, but is this the worst thing that's ever happened to you?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because
What about Miss Hutchins?
I think back And I think of what could I have done?
Alec Baldwin, Unscripted, the newsmaking special event, tomorrow night at 8.
Alec Baldwin, complete bullshit. So Alec Baldwin, for saying that you didn't touch the trigger of that gun, it's not your fault. As a matter of fact, you were just doing what she told you to do and blaming the victim. You are the first contestant in Moron of the Week. But not to be outdone, this is another piece from Breitbart. California diner kicks out uniformed police officers to create safe space. The staff of from December 5th, the staff of a San Francisco restaurant denied service to 3 uniformed police officers after claiming the officers' weapons made them feel uncomfortable. The staff then proudly posted the incident on social media. The staff of Hilda and Jesse San Francisco posted on Instagram an announcement that they asked 3 uniformed police officers to leave their restaurant after the sidearms police are required to wear made them feel uncomfortable. They declared the restaurant to be a safe space. The presence of their weapons in the restaurant made us uncomfortable, the staff added to the Instagram post as a comment. This is not a political statement. We did what we thought was best for our staff. At Hilda and Jesse, the restaurant is a safe space, the post states. The presence of the officers' weapons in the restaurant made us feel uncomfortable. We respect the San Francisco Police Department and are grateful for the work they do. They conclude by saying the officers are welcome to return when off duty, out of uniform, and without their weapons. The anti-police action by the restaurant staff comes amid spiking crime wave in San Francisco and other Bay Area communities where organized criminal groups raid and loot retail establishments. High-end businesses in the city's Union Square area boarded up after a string of mass looting events rocked the region, Breitbart's Joel Pollack reported. The mass looting incidents evolved after law enforcement officials in the city refused to prosecute shoplifters. Walgreens closed 17 stores in May following repeated shoplifting incidents, Breitbart's John Nolte wrote. The San Francisco Chronicle called the city's crime wave out of control. Just 2 weeks ago, Pollack reported the spreading of the crime wave into the upscale Walnut Creek Bay Area suburb. A mass looting incident took place at the Nordstrom store located in the city at the base of Mount Diablo. Hilda and Jesse's operations / co-owner, Rachel Silcox, responded to the expulsion of the uniformed officers, writing, "The fact that they were in uniform with multiple weapons on them made our staff uncomfortable and potentially other guests." A Twitter user took exception to the actions of the restaurant with the following tweet, asking what makes people feel uncomfortable in San Francisco. What makes people comfortable and uncomfortable in San Francisco? I guess comfortable L and uncomfortable right. Oh, okay. Another question is the restaurant owner's priorities when they don't pay their staff equitable wages. I'm all for equitable wages, and that's what Hilda and Jesse should be paying, not forcing on its customers. I always tip at greater than 20%, but forcing it on customers is wrong. Just increase your prices and be honest about it. Hilda and Jesse may think they are being compassionate. Alternatively, they may simply be arrogant assholes, but they do not speak for those impacted the most by crime. Apparently, this place charges an equitable wage surcharge. So, yeah. What's going on? Why was he timed out for that? Mountain Dew said he likely ate some lemon heads, I'm guessing in reference to making fun of what LeBron James said about Kyle Rittenhouse. He was applying that to Alec Baldwin. I agree. So anyhow, yeah, California Diner. You guys are contestant number 2 on Moron of the Week. And of course, Joe Biden has his honorary 3rd slot. So who do you guys think should be the morons of the week? Is it Alec Baldwin, the detestable diner, or as I have it, the diner dingleberries, or Joe Biden? Let me know. Pickle, what do you think?
I'm gonna have to go with the diner, but hey, I gotta balance out budget.
All right, man. Thanks for coming. You want to leave us with any final thoughts before you go?
Just thank you for letting me, come on and join you again, another week in a row.
No problem, man. You're always welcome here. All right, folks out there in the chat, who deserves to be moron of the week? Alec Baldwin, the Diner Dingleberries, or Joe Biden, just because, you know, he's Joe Biden. Make sure you sound off in the chat as well as vote in the polls. In the poll right now, we got 4 votes. 75% Alec Baldwin, 25% Diner Dingleberries, and 0% for Joe Biden. Well, I'm sure once the Dominion voting machines kick in, that'll change. Michael Scribner says San Francisco was a shithole 30 years ago when he was there. I'm sure it still is. You know, I would almost accept that I don't wish this sort of thing on anybody, but boy, the irony if that place got robbed. Man, that would just be, that would be absolutely terrible if they were robbed. Because I know that if I were one of the police officers responding to that call, I would be tempted to be an asshole and not come inside. But you know what? They're better than that. They would go inside. They would go inside if the robber was still there. They would do their job. That's the difference between us and them, isn't it? Right now, 7 votes. Alec Baldwin, 57%. Diner Dingleberries, 43%. Joe Biden still got nothing. What do you guys think out there in the chat? Do you think that it would be a great bit of karma coming home to roost if that diner was happened to face a criminal attack, if they happen to see that their safe space isn't? Or am I just being a jerk? Rich White says the Diner Dingleberries get my vote. Baldwin would get my vote if it were a-hole of the week. I hear ya. 7 votes, 57% Baldwin, 43% Diner Dingleberries. Looks like Alec Baldwin's winning this one so far. Oh, I'm not allowed to vote in the poll. How about that? I'm disenfranchised. All right, folks, we're going to go ahead and call it. With 57% of the vote, Alec Baldwin, you are the right of the people's moron of the week.
And there we had another tale of stupidity in this week's episode of Moron of the Week.
And at this point, folks, the longtime viewers of the show will know right where we're at. We are going from the ridiculous to the sublime. Self-defense shout-outs. Self-defense shout-outs are not where I'm reveling in the proposition that the bad guy won the room temperature challenge and took a dirt nap. Oh no, oh no. It's where I'm reveling instead in the proposition that the good guy had the means, method, and opportunity to keep the bad guy from making him do the same. First up from Philadelphia, philadelphia.cbslocal.com. A homeowner opened fire on an intruder in Holmesburg on Sunday night, police say. The shooting happened around 11 p.m. on the 4700 block of Asheville Street. Police said they arrived to find a 31-year-old suspect shot in the face in the basement. He was taken to the hospital where he's listed in critical condition. Next up, from Breitbart, Chicago woman who got shot at, alleged robbers says, God, I was ready. An alleged armed carjacker fled the scene Monday afternoon in Chicago after a woman with a concealed carry permit pulled her own gun and opened fire. Fox 32 reports that the incident occurred at approximately 3 p.m. on the 10,200 block of South Michigan. The woman was allegedly approached by 2 suspects, one of whom allegedly pulled a gun. The woman, a concealed carry permit holder, pulled her own gun and opened fire. CBS 2 notes that the woman said she had just walked out of the bank and gotten into her car when a suspect opened her door and allegedly pointed a gun at her head. The woman said, I had just come out of the bank and was sitting in my car about to lock my door to pull off and leave, and he opened my door and put a gun in my face. She added, and when he saw me get mine, he looked surprised, and I started shooting, and he started running. The woman observed, I pray every night that I don't have to shoot nobody, but if I have to, I'm prepared and ready. So God, I was ready. Police do not know if any of the woman's shots struck the alleged suspects. Yes, and it's a good thing for you that you were ready. Good for you. Next up from hannahpub.com. Vidalia man dead following shooting. It's a kind of a misleading headline, right? A shooting in Wildsville on Sunday resulted in the death of a Vidalia man. According to Concordia Parish Sheriff's Office reports, deputies responded to a call of a shooting at 277 Luttrell Road in Wildsville after 8 p.m. Sunday. The reports indicate that deputies contacted LaToya Smith, who stated she'd been beaten and choked by her boyfriend, LaKendrick Smith, before shooting him. LaKendrick Smith lived at 124 Martin Luther King in Vidalia. According to CPSO reports, LaToya Smith and LaKendrick Smith had a restraining order. LaToya Smith said LaKendrick Smith had a restraining order against him for a previous domestic incident against her. Concordia Parish Sheriff David Hedrick said the district attorney's office is assisting with the case, which is still under investigation. No charges have been filed. Nor should they. But hey, this never should have happened. She had a restraining order, right? That works, doesn't it? Doesn't it? Oh, it don't? Oh. From KMOV.com, man shot and killed during attempted robbery in South City from December 1st. Is updated December 1st, posted November 30th. South St. Louis. A man was shot and killed in an attempted robbery near a South City apartment complex Tuesday afternoon, police say. The shooting happened near the Fountains at Carondelet apartment complex in the 7800 block of Germania just before 3:30 p.m. Police say 3 men met at the apartment complex before one of the men tried to rob the other 2. The 2 men then shot him. The deceased man's identity has not been released. Anyone with information is encouraged to call police or Crime Stoppers. I guess that fella couldn't do math. And last but most certainly not least from Omaha.com. Alleged home intruder fatally shot in Bellevue, police say, from December 4th. A 43-year-old Omaha man. My God. I know I'm getting tired. A 43-year-old Omaha man was fatally shot Saturday morning during an alleged home invasion in Bellevue. Here, let me answer these ridiculous questions so I can read the rest of the article. There. Lou P. Slaughter Jr. was shot by one of the 3 occupants in the home in the 1700 block of Yorktown Street, according to Bellevue Police Sergeant Howard Banks. Slaughter was pronounced dead at the scene. Detectives are still investigating, but Banks said it definitely does not appear to be a random act. The event was reported to police as a possible home invasion about 3:39 a.m. Banks said he couldn't comment on whether the deceased was armed. Nobody had been arrested as of Saturday evening, Banks said. Police are not currently releasing information on the 3 occupants of the home. So there you go, folks. Despite what the mainstream legacy media would have you believe, the good guy with the gun does in fact stop the bad guy. And they do it all the time. I would like to thank Pickle for being with us throughout most of the show tonight. Go ahead to Calaveras 32 Special and check his stuff out. I guess if you guys are real gluttons for punishment and have nothing better to do and a strong stomach and are resistant to salmonella, you could go over to Midnight Range TM this evening and watch The Closer. I give him a bunch of crap, but that's kind of how we relate. So, he does good stuff. It's a good show. It's a fun show. So go ahead and check that out. There's usually a wide variety of topics discussed. So, go check that out. I want to thank all of you out there in the chat for being out there in the chat. I want to thank my mods for taking care of business tonight. I want to make sure that you guys know how important it is to be accountable and be responsible with your guns. With any of your weapons, with anything that can be used as a weapon. I'm all about a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. 100%. But along with that right comes the responsibility to exercise it in a way that isn't going to result in your tools being misused. Be responsible, folks. That way, we don't have it thrust upon us. Because I'd rather do it myself than have somebody tell me I have to do it. You know what I mean? Don't think I'm anti-gun in the slightest, because I'm not. But I am pro-responsibility and personal accountability, and I think everybody should be. Make sure that if you're in Pennsylvania, let Governor Wolf know what you think about his veto of your constitutional carry bill. If you're in Oklahoma, make sure you let them know what you think about Kyle's law. And here in Ohio, contact your senator, because we have constitutional carry coming up in our Senate. And all across the fruited plain, contact your Congress critters and elected representatives. Let them know what you think. Send them a snail mail, email, telephone, telegraph, carrier pigeon, bicycle messengers, smoke signals, tom-toms, anything that you have to do to let them know what you think, and never, ever, ever give up the fight. I'll talk to you guys on the next one.